invented that community in their downtown area to do the kind of things that other communities would be proud of. But you don't make a best of list by accident. Those things don't happen by accident. And I think that our community's decision to elect Joey Durrell, his decision to embark on this very ambitious program and to assemble the team to get it done, and our relationship with the business community and with the minority community and the urban core and other places, I think has served us very, very well in making those best of lists. My comment is, let's make the best of even better.
Yeah, I saw that comment that Joey Durrell made in one of his speeches, and I thought that, we were first, in Austin, I think they were fifth on that list.
Yes.
They were named fifth.
Right.
Joey Durrell says of you that, you have a tremendous work ethics. You're the Energizer Bunny, and he doesn't know anyone who returns calls, and you just told me in 2 days you had 250 calls. And
I'm not as good at it as I used to be, Doc. I have to admit that to the viewing public. I now have more calls than I have minutes in a day. That's a good problem to have because I care about outreach. But I've prided myself in same-day service, usually within a half day to try to get those calls returned. If you're one of those out there watching and I have not returned your call, it's not on purpose. I promise you. It's a question of minutes in demand.
And getting your emails responded.
Yes. I was supposed to send you some of the discussion items and topics for this last night. Yeah. You didn't get it until this morning.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I understand you've got a few things extra going on now that you didn't have a year ago.
Yes.
But that's understandable. Okay, I want to talk about the achievements that has taken place in the last 8 years. Okay. With your work with Joey Durrell. Of course, you carry out all these directives. You're the leg man for the parish president, more or less, and you work with every department, overseeing everything and troubleshooting. And I'm sure you get a lot of emails and telephone calls in the course of it. But there's several achievements that have taken place. Building of 2 natural gas fired power plants without raising taxes.
Let me put you on pause and discuss that one very briefly, just for 30 seconds, because it's not something that people would pay attention to. It doesn't have that broad-based appeal of a horse farm project or fiber optics. But what was important about those 2 small plants, and those are $50 million plants, and it is that when the demand comes for power and our businesses and our citizens turn their lights on and their air conditioning goes on, it better work. And they don't worry about how it works, and they shouldn't. But in 2004, we recognized at some point that the demand was going to exceed our capacity to be able to meet that demand. What happened back then was we got with Terry Huval, got with the engineering community, and we designed some very efficient plants for their day. GE jet turbine engines, basically, that can ramp up in 20 minutes. Unmanned plants. So you don't have this expense of a large number of employees that are not working. So the plant runs when the plant needs to run. In 2009, we would have hit that threshold of not being able to produce enough power for us to be able to generate it. And there would have been potentially brownouts or even blackouts in our community for the first time in history. And our people, you want to see a best of list evaporate? That type of thing happens where there's no confidence in your utility and there's no confidence to be able to meet the very basic demands of what your community needs. And we recognized that early on, and we went after that project literally weeks into the 2004 year and got those plants eventually built. People say, well, why don't you just purchase power? Well, we're doing that today. And back in the day, Lafayette used to be a surplus power generator, and we would sell power. Other communities would purchase power from us. Our demand does not, and our growth does not allow us to do that today. So while it's fine to say, why don't you just purchase power? You have to get that power here. And the transmission grid in this country, you've seen national news about that. You know, within the last 10 years, we've had catastrophic blackouts in the Northeast because of issues related to the grid and the fact that it does not have the integrity that it once did. And by grid, I mean the power lines that actually it's like a big traffic cop trying to get power that's generated somewhere else. But we are involved with an organization now called MISO, where we participate in generating power. And MISO participates in generating power, and then it distributes the power where it's needed on demand. So that's helped us, and it is a very sophisticated model. Decisions are made hourly, every day, as it relates to the MISO model on what power goes where and who generates what. So it's a lot more efficient in being able to get the power that you need, but you don't have all of your marbles in one basket. Lafayette is still able to generate its own power and to be able to take care of its own need, and I think that's very significant.
There was the Lafayette Utilities Fiber Initiative, which we know now is very successful, and it was one of George Durrell's big issues when he came into office to establish that, and we've successfully there now. You know,
those were some great meetings.
And it was a big accomplishment because it was quite an undertaking.
I don't know if we've ever discussed this publicly before. Those early meetings were great. And I have to tell you that Mayor Durrell had struggled with that decision for government providing a service, at least as it related to television and telephone. The internet service was not being provided where we needed it. When you had great companies like Cox and AT&T already providing that service. So you don't take, as an elected official, you don't take competing against two companies like that employ a lot of people, that make major investments in the communities where they live and employ those people, and you don't take that lightly. So the first thing Mayor Durrell did was he called the leaders of those companies together and organized a meeting and laid out what he wanted to do. And what we heard from them at that time was that Lafayette was not a tier 1 community. That if they were going to spend the kind of money that needed to be spent to provide that service, it would be in a much larger city. And they named several cities as examples. And in fact, in Louisiana, we would have been considered a tier 2 city. It would make sense, I would think, that New Orleans, because of population and the rebuild after Katrina, and Baton Rouge is the capital of state government, and Shreveport, because of its size and the population and the Arklatex, would be places where they would look at making that investment. But Joey Durrell told those officials, those company corporate folks, that he said, I'm not the mayor of any of those cities. And we believe that there's going to be a hunger for bandwidth over the next decade that we better be in a position to be able to meet. And you guys are equipped to be able to do it. And they decided not to do it. And, you know, they said, we're going to challenge you legally. And they did that. And then there was an election, and the people overwhelmingly voted for it. Then they challenged us legally again, and it went all the way to the Louisiana Supreme Court. The Louisiana Supreme Court, by a vote of 7-0, a unanimous vote, gave the go-ahead for us to be able to proceed with that project 3 years later. And now fiber now is cash flow positive and has, you know, tens of thousands of customers, is providing the fastest internet speeds in North America, some of the fastest in the world. And there are communities that 20 years from now won't be able to do what we're doing. So when you look at the companies that we've previously mentioned, and I know because I've spoken to the CEOs of those companies, and ask them why they're here. The state incentives are significant. That's important as it relates to either tax breaks or a public-private partnership. That's why they're in Louisiana.
Correct.
That's not why they're in Lafayette. They could be in any of the other cities we just mentioned. The reason they're in Lafayette, there are three, basically. The university, but there are universities in other cities. Fiber optics and the fastest internet speed, which exists nowhere else in Louisiana. And our people, that wildcatter, entrepreneurial spirit, our work ethic, our workforce. And I heard that from the CEOs of those companies. That discussion doesn't happen without fiber optics.
I was going to say that does attract a lot of people, industry to Lafayette that normally wouldn't come here because we have this fiber optics in place.
Right.
And has afforded us so much growth in that area and will continue in the future. I want to talk about the road extensions,
Okay.
extending Louisiana Avenue, Pointe Mouton Road, Settlers Trace, widening of College Saloon. These are some of the things that were accomplished over the past 8 years. And then the plan for a new airport terminal.
Widening of College Saloon is still under construction. It's going to be some time before that happens. We need to build more roads, wider roads, longer roads. Got to build them as fast as we can build them. And the challenge is to do it without tax increases. People have said pretty seriously that they don't want to see any games with taxes. They don't want to see any property taxes put on top of the burden that they already have to pay in supporting their families. The airport model offers up a very interesting model to be able to do some very creative things. And many of the people, and we still hear it, they do not believe that tax is going to go away. And a lot of that is because of the lack of confidence that they have in state government. I had a friend say, we're still waiting on the lottery money. Wasn't the lottery money supposed to save higher education? Where's all that money going? Sure. But there is a challenge to be able to meet the demand that people want. So do you toll roads? Well, a toll is just a fancy word for a tax, right? It's something. Yeah. It's something that I have to pay. But people also say, why does Texas have the type of roads they have? They have tolls on many of those roads.
Correct, they do.
You either need to get federal money, you either need to raise local money and incur debt to be able to do it, you need to toll it. The important thing, I think, is to explain and to communicate to the public and to understand their demand and what they want and what they're willing to pay for that demand. They told us in 2006, when we put a proposition up for a sales tax with a taxing district, to do $600 million in roads between 2006 and 2016, which is next year. And that tax failed. The voters spoke in resounding fashion that we don't want any additional taxes. Do what you got to do with the money that you have. So that's what we've been doing. So a lot of the accomplishments, all of the accomplishments that have been happening without an increase in taxes and within the existing framework. We're doing it. We're just not doing it, I think, fast enough. Fast forward to the airport. We looked potentially at using that model, and what I mean is a tax that goes away after a certain period of time. And for the airport, we're about 90 days away from that. And I assure the public that tax will go away legally. It sunsets. It drops off the table. That gives you an opportunity to do something else. Well, I understand the challenges. Then the public will say, well, wait a minute. The tax goes away for the airport, but then it comes back to build what? The beauty of that scenario is you get to decide. The public gets to decide, not me, not our council, not anyone else. And that is, if you want to build $60 million in roads, major projects, 2 new bridges across the river potentially, you can do it for one tax, 1 year, and then that tax goes away. So then, yeah, you will have had a tax for a year and 8 months, but that's better than the government saying, we're going to put a tax in that never goes away, and we're going to incur debt that's going to take us 25 years to pay off. Because remember, you'd be paying cash for those projects. You would not be incurring any additional debt. So I look forward to having the conversation with our community to determine what it wants, what it's willing to do, to stay away from the things that are a waste of time, that are not going to pass, that don't make any sense, but to engage in real serious conversations about building out this community. One of the best demographers in our state expects the state to grow, the parish to grow 90,000 people between now and 2035. Where are we going to put them? Not only where are they going to live, where urban core is an answer, bringing people back to the urban core in the downtown area. We're already hearing from people who want to live back downtown. The new companies that are coming to town, a lot of those younger people have indicated they would love to live in the downtown area. And then again, what I said to start this conversation, wider roads, longer roads, better roads, and more roads. That has to be the answer.
Great. You said you wanted a world-class performing arts center. Mm-hmm. And can you elaborate on that?
Sure, I think we deserve it. But there are a lot, as we just talked about, the medical school is a priority, improving roads and drainage is a priority, taking care of law enforcement is a priority. There are a lot of number one priorities. And getting our arms around what would be a a $75 or $80 million building, more than the cost of the Cajun Dome was when it was built 30 years ago. It's kind of hard to get your arms around that, to get your mind around doing that when you have all of the other needs that we have, and then where is the money going to come from to operate it? There are several models that are out there. Government cannot afford to do it, and I do not believe the community is going to give the permission for us to do it by ourselves. The private sector needs to play a role in that, but the private sector couldn't and shouldn't be willing to do it all themselves to run this type of facility. And then the state, potentially. The state has contributed capital outlay money to performing arts centers in other communities, and they contributed the money that built the current Acadiana Center for the Arts. So there are several, and then there's our university as a player. If you look in Columbus, Columbus used their Performing Arts Center in partnership and collaboration with their university to revitalize their downtown. It was paid, I'm rounding numbers here, but it was paid roughly 1/3 by the state, 1/3 by the local government, 1/3 by a benefactor. Again, that's the type of discussion to have. That is not the type of facility where a decision will be made, money will be raised, and the facility will be built, potentially within the next 5 to 10 years, but we at least ought to have the conversation. If we're going to be a city and parish of 350,000 at some point, we have to have the type of entertainment facilities and the things that people demand so we can continue that best of list.
Correct. My director has given me the signal to need to wrap it up. We're coming short on time here.
Yes, sir.
So your vision for Lafayette, if you could kind of capsulize that for me over the next 8 years.
Well, I'll start with my comment of let's make the best of even better. If you like where we've been, I think you're going to love where we're going. I don't take complete credit for the things that we've done in the past 12 years, and I shouldn't. What I have been is part of an amazing team that Mayor Durrell has put together. I am proud to be one of the leaders of that team. I am a pro-business person and a pro-business candidate. I don't believe in additional taxes. I believe in additional taxpayers. The more you're able to develop your community and to do it with a comprehensive plan, to unify our development code, to protect the urban core, to reduce sprawl where we can, and to allow the private sector to be able to function not in spite of government and not because of government, but with government as a partner. Those are the things that I believe in. The more we can do that, and we've done it in the past 12 years, we keep unemployment low, we keep the workforce demand high, we have well-paying jobs, those people move into a community that they love, they stay, they spend their money here, that helps those businesses thrive, but it also helps to support government services. So it's about balance.
Correct. Dee, I want to thank you very much for taking your valuable time.
Thanks, Doc, and thank you for watching.
And coming on my program today and going over these points. We've been talking to Dee Stanley, the Chief Administrative Officer for the past 8 years here in Lafayette, who is currently a candidate in the parish president race at this time. I'm Dr. Rick Duplantis. I hope you've enjoyed this program and the insight that was shared with you. I hope you tune in next week to our program, It's Your Health. Hope you have a very pleasant evening. God bless you.